Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle, because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. We still surviving off of grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps is inconspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity. Like living in this fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading. Look, they don't even need a reason. It's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. Said it got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics. Like condom with some trinkets, just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat. And maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on song.
What's happening, good people? This is RSTV on Black Power Media. You know what time it is. Beautiful day to be African. It's a wonderful day to be part of our people liberation movement. A lot going on in the world today. Wanted to call in one of my OGs. We say OGs mean original guerrillas, veteran of the Black Panther Party, veteran of the Black Liberation Army. We have some things to talk about. We know that one of the mothers of our movement made her transition a little over a month ago. Assata Shakur. Want to bring on one of her comrades, one of the people that knew her best, that knew her throughout her movement, life, and my man Dhoruba Bin Wahad is going to be joining me in a second. We're also going to talk about some of the things that's going on globally. It's a war going on. It's always a war going on. We talk about, imperialism. We're going to talk about fascism. We're going to talk about where we are today. It's so much going on. Want to definitely remind you all to be careful out there. You know what I'm saying? Be careful. It's a cold world. But we're going to win despite ourselves. Dhoruba, turn your camera on, man. Let me bring you on deck so we can talk to the people real quick. Again, this is Black Power Media. Make sure you check out our archives. We have a real powerful platform. If you're unfamiliar, make sure you like, subscribe, share. This right here is about to be a powerful episode. Without further ado, we're going to bring on my brother, comrade, triple OG, Dhoruba Bin Wahad. What's happening, brother? How you feeling?
Fighting fire with a feather, black man. How you doing?
Man, listen, man, my future's so bright I had to wear shades for this one, man. You know what I'm
I'm
saying?
trying to tell you now, man. Mine's is getting out of focus in my old age, so I got to put my glasses on.
Oh, okay,
But they progressive lenses, they turn dark in the sunlight.
They turn dark in the sunlight. See that's that's a we turn dark in the sunlight. The way this way is going on around here. Man, I want to start off. First of all, glad to have you on board. It's been a minute since we sat down. I know you're over in Africa. What I mean, probably running for president or something. I'm not sure.
Running from the president.
Sound more accurate. Speaking of running from the president, what I'm saying? We got plenty of reasons, nowadays. Got your homeboy from New York. He's still in office. You know what I mean? I don't even know what to say right now because, shit, you could.
Come on, man. What homeboy are you ascribing to me now, man?
Oh, man, the brother with
You're
the
not
orange.
talking the orange man or that Negro or that little pimpernel, Adams. Which one you talking about, man?
Adams. Oh man.
He's talking about he said he ain't finished, man. He gonna pop up somewhere else. He might be the U.S. ambassador to the Congo.
Hey, he might be, man. Look at Andy Young. You know what I'm saying? Anything can happen. Anything can happen. I want to first start off. I want to pay homage to a personal comrade of yours, one who we one that we've discussed on this platform numerous times throughout the years. We've had different shows centered around her, centered around the BLA, centered around the Black Panther Party, her contributions, her work, her liberation, and the quote unquote exile. And now, unfortunately, we're here today to discuss her transitioning, a day that we never wanted to see come. You know what I mean? You and I, we've been on this platform numerous times. We traveled over the past 20 plus years. And so often, every now and then, we got to come out here, come on the screen and talk about another fallen comrade, right? For folks who are unfamiliar, and of course, we broke down her story numerous times, but as you know, there's always new generations coming up, and with new generations and old generations, sometimes we get folklore, we get misinformation, we get miscommunication. We got folks that were in the party that were never in the party, some younger than me, you know what I mean? It's just all types of craziness. But I want to start off by saying, first of all, salute to Assata Shakur. And I want to know from you, like, for folks who are unaware, who is Assata Shakur? I'm not even going to say who was, because of the fact that we know that revolutionaries don't die, they multiply.
Well, first of all, Kalonji, thanks for having me come in to to talk about some relevant stuff for a few minutes or hour or so. As far as the Assata was concerned, I met. Let me say that I came into Assata's life, and of course, she came into mine. In the whirlwind. Before the whirlwind, before then, I can't say that I know Assata. You feel what I'm saying? I mean, she has a family, she has background, she comes from, she had a past when I met her. But when I met her, it was the whirlwind, and we had just had the national conference to combat fascism. We had a national United Front meeting because the Black Panther Party at that particular time was was one of the leading left radical left revolutionary Black organizations not only in the U.S. but in the diaspora. You know, we have Black Panther Party comrades and people all over the continent of Europe, especially in the UK and France, and in Western Asia as well. You know, in the days of the PFLP, when the PFLP was one of the leading Palestinian liberation movements in the mid to late '60s. So that's how I know Assata. I know from struggle. Okay, as a field secretary in the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party, and working out of Harlem when I was out on Panther 21 bail. You know, it was months after the United Front had been organized, and the party out of the United Front conference came the NCCF chapters. It was decided by the organizations and activists who attended the Anti-Fascist United Front that they would go back to their particular cities and communities and organize national committees to combat fascism. Now, what would these national committees be about? They would be about organizing in the community to begin to develop mobilization amongst the most disaffected community, disaffected class in the community of so-called lumpen, poor people who are on social services, and to take control of public safety, to take community control of police, to organize, to take control of their environment. The public safety didn't just mean control of the police. It also meant dealing with healthcare. It also meant was dealing how community sanitation and infrastructure would be administered, and all of these things. You see what I'm saying? And the methodology was, of course, to mobilize people, organize people, and get them to sign on a referendum so that they could put on the local elections, on the local ballots for community control of police and decentralization of police. This was a big no-no for law enforcement. They mobilized millions and millions of dollars across an entire spectrum of political and cultural life in order to thwart the call for community control of public safety, and they were successful. They were successful in that their propaganda convinced the Boule Negro class, the black middle class, that the idea of community complaint review boards was more in keeping with support for the police in their onerous task of criminal law enforcement. So they created the idea of the community complaint review boards. And we all know the history of these institutions across America. They've been totally toothless. They never stopped police murder and brutality, and very few policemen have been held to account as a result of community complaint review boards, for held accountable for murder and for brutality against Black people. So that's what was organized up in Harlem Heights, where Assata was living. She was a student at City College in New York. She was a nursing student, and she was a very conscious sister. And the campuses were very conscious at that time in the 60s, in late mid 60s. And so she joined the National Committee to Combat Fascism. And in fact, I'm the one that signed her up. I took her down to the office in Harlem and signed her up, because at that time, the Black Panther Party the ranks were closed to straight up membership because of the Panther 21 case, because of the brutal repressions that the Panther Party was going through. So we developed a community education process where what we call community workers would come in and sell the newspaper, go to PE classes, but they weren't full-fledged Panther members as such. That was a process they would have to go through in order to achieve that, you know. And so that's how Assata became involved with the Harlem branch of the Black Panther Party as a nursing cadre, as a health cadre, because her specialty was nursing. So to cut to the chase, when the leadership of the Black Panther Party on the West Coast began to move to the right, began to alienate and take advantage of the various chapters, local leaderships, is when Assata's skills as a nursing student came into play, because some of us in the party had to deal with the underground structure that we had been creating for over 2 years, and that was the BLA architecture and underground, structure. And so when we went underground in '71, Assata and the entire NCCF chapter in Harlem, also, began to function as an underground component of the BLA. I had organized it that way because these were new kids. Like I said, they were not known to the party as members. They were not known to the party as exploitable or foilable individuals, but they had the same party discipline. They had the same party ideology, and they were organized the same way. But Assata and only a few actually became party members. But when we were underground, they didn't have no time to breathe, basically, what I'm saying. They didn't have no time to breathe. And Assata's major task at first was setting up emergency medical care. Comrades would get injured or wounded, and they might get away or whatever, but there's laws and rules and regulations that if a gunshot wound that's reported in emergency hospitals automatically requires that the police are called, and if they're going to be treated. Some of our comrades received wounds, but it was the network of medical cadre that we had in the hospitals that Assata was mainly charged with organizing at first that came through. So we were able to get brothers treated in Harlem Hospital, Lincoln Hospital, without anyone even knowing we were getting them treated. And we had our own rehabilitation and medical facilities in different safe houses. And Assata, that's how that she initially became involved. But the repression, some of us getting captured, some of us getting killed, forced certain cadre to assume expanded roles, if you know what I mean. That is assumed expanded roles. And some of the individuals that we were dealing with then were party members who were also purged from the party because of the split between East and West Coast and the other chapters. These were brothers like Zaid Shakur and others who Assata began to work more closely with, because the first cadre by the end of '71, the first cadre to BLA was basically on the move and either decimated or captured. You see what I'm saying? So other comrades who were in the party, who had leadership roles, but who hadn't gone underground, became more, doing more work in terms of networking and moving parts of the clandestine structure. And that's how Assata got caught out there on the New Jersey Turnpike with Zaid and Sundiata. Yeah. Just for a footnote, Zaid Malik Shakur was Deputy Minister of Information for the East Coast in the New York chapter. And Sundiata Acoli was a comrade in the Panther 21. And he was actually in prison when the split happened. Because it happened, they got released after the conviction was, after the trial, after they got acquitted. And it was around almost at the simultaneous with the acquittal was when in New York, when we had to go underground, those of us who were in the New York 21, myself, Michael Setterwhite, Tabor, Jamal Josephs, and a few other comrades.
I want to, because we all get back to the New Jersey Turnpike incident, because I think that it's necessary. And salute to Sundiata, who is released after several decades of imprisonment. I believe Sundiata is probably like 87, 88 years old right now. But I want to, because you mentioned the split a couple times, and again, there are people who don't know about the Black Panther Party, who don't know about the BLA, and oftentimes we take things for granted and we assume that everyone knows what's going on, but clearly, since history has been rewritten and it's being rewritten at a rapid pace between AI and FBI, you know what I'm saying? Intelligence is ignorance at its finest. I want to ask, because folks, I know they're the whole folks have talked about East Coast, West Coast, they've even compared it to hip hop beef, etc. Right? But I want to know, talk to us about this split, this Black Panther Party split, and also the difference between the BLA and the Black Panther Party, because of the fact that some people, unfortunately, still to this very day, think that the Black Liberation Army and the Black Panther Party was the same thing. So, if you don't mind, talk to us about the split and also, the difference between the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army.
Well, because me and you go back like rocking chairs, talking about, I just have a domain site that I just created, and it's called A Soldier's Story. And the narrative of this is going to be played out over the next several weeks to Black History Month. And it's going to be documents, video, comrades, police files and everything. It's going to be a narrative, so it's not going to be, people calling in and giving their opinion and all of that stuff. And it's going to feature soldiers that were in the BLA who died and were killed, and comrades who survived and how they survived, and all of this, all the way up to the real issue that we have today of incarcerated African men and women who have developed a sense of revolutionary consciousness, and that was sparked by the Black Panther Party's history, and also the events that spun around that, which was, of course, the George Jackson's story and his relationship as a field marshal of the Black Panther Party in prison, and that dovetails off into the BGF history, which is a whole nother thing, and G on the West Coast, which hits into the United Slave Movement and Karanga and us over this, a whole lot of stuff, but what I'm going to tell is the story of how we on the east and southeast and Midwest side, saw our struggle at that time and the role that we had to play, and the role that armed resistance and self-defense played in upholding the political integrity of the African community. Without self-defense, without our ability to resist and exact the consequence on the enemy when they violated our human rights, when they violated our constitutional and legal rights, then we were meaningless, we were worthless, we were useless, we cannon fodder. So it was that attitude that lay at the heart of the Black Liberation Army. So to say that it wasn't part of the Black Panther Party is true in that sense, that we didn't see self-defense, or we were forced into a position where the best defense was a good offense, and that we had to develop the capacity to 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 resist, that so that the enemy and so that those in the community who were taking advantage and brutalize of our people and brutalizing them, that they realized that they could not do this with impunity. You see, that yes, we would try to pursue all legal means of holding them accountable, but in the final analysis, we didn't get mad, we got even. So that was the mindset, which brings us around to today. You see, and so, but the party though, at that particular juncture, the counterintelligence program, of which I have 30,000 pages of files, and some of those files are going to be exhibited during the course of the Soldier Story, which we hopefully will get up and running in the next 10 days or so. And so I urge everybody to tune in. It's a good fundraiser for the work I'm trying to do and everything. Anyway, not to segue away from that, the move, when I say the leadership was moving to the right, there was, after Huey Newton got out of prison, it was clear that, you know, he faced a considerable degree of bewilderment and adjustment, because he went into prison. The Black Panther Party was a local organization, you know, with only a few outlying branches in California. And when he came out of prison, it was a national organization with chapters in over 32 cities in the United States, you see. And up until that point, the major administrator and organizer of that was the chief of staff of the Black Panther Party, who was in regular communications with Huey while he was in prison. And I regularly reported to Huey while he was in prison through the chief of staff and audible media that was taken into him on legal visits. So Huey was always informed by those individuals who were of the Central Committee who were out of prison at that time. And the major conduit for that was Charles Gary, his attorney. Okay. Having said that, events were moving very fast while Huey was in prison. We know about the assassination of MLK. We know about the LA siege with the first SWAT team. We know about all of these events that happened before or after Huey got immediately out of prison. And if you remember, one of the reasons Huey was identified in the beginning was because of the stand that the Panthers took in Oakland against the police, the surveillance of police and armed patrols with the law book, and we all know the history of that. That's pretty the main history of how the NRA didn't support African men with guns, and this goes into our history. This means we have to read. That we have to go into the history of white supremacy in America and its fear and its aboriginal fear of slaves that are armed, of black men and women with guns. There's a deep fear of this, and it's been manifest in law enforcement ever since the bullwhip days, ever since the police emerged out of the slave catchers and patty rollers in New York. You follow me? So this fear of black men with guns, you understand, was a galvanizing image, contrasted to the civil rights images of dogs biting activists and black ministers and black women being beaten by state troopers just to integrate a institution or to exercise the right to vote, you see. So we were in stark contrast to that image, if you follow what I'm saying. So that drew the youth to the Black Panther Party. And it drew the youth to the Black Panther Party across class lines. There were middle class youth, but mainly the street brothers and sisters identified with the party more so than others, because there always been a confrontational and antagonistic relationship between brothers and sisters on the street hustling for a living and the police. They understood the mentality of the police. They understood their criminal nature, their criminal mentality, and their cowardness and their devious nature. So it was these elements that admired the party the most, if you follow what I'm saying. And they were the ones that were most amenable to the idea and the notion of armed self-defense. And I want to say here that we have to understand that contrary to certain derogatory images portrayed by certain artists, the Black Panther Party was not a bunch of macho men who had a fascination with guns. The gun was a means of propaganda. That's what the gun was for. It was symbolic of what Malcolm said about Black people defending themselves, and also about our ability to let white supremacists know that any action that they take against our community, there's going to be a consequence.
Right.
You see? And so that image, that executive order number 1 that Huey issued, that said it was the duty of African people to arm themselves or harm themselves, and that we should take notice of the police actions in our community. Because you got to remember, this was at a time when each communities in many cities were going up in flames because of police brutality or the police murder of someone in the community. Most of the riots during the 60s were sparked by police violence and feelings of injustice at the hands of law enforcement. And so this history is what predated the BLM movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, which I'm going to get to shortly. And of course, which you're going to lead me into with the appropriate question. But right now, I just want to say that, so the party, that's where the party positions itself. The party ran a candidate for president with the Peace and Freedom Party, a white organization that was registered to vote in a few states. That allowed our platform, the 10-point program and platform, to become an issue that people should consider in an electoral process. You see what I'm saying? The right to self-determination, the right to adequate education, decent housing, you see, fit for a human being. All of these things were part of the Black Panther Party's 10-point program. So when Eldridge was able to travel on a presidential campaign, running as an alternate candidate, independent candidate on the Peace and Freedom ticket, it permitted him the opportunity to go to all of these venues and talk about the idea of Black power, the idea of coalitions with working people, et cetera, et cetera. You see what I'm saying? And so it was as a result of that tour that Eldridge came to New York. A little under a year after the founding of the party in October of '66. And he did a big event at Fillmore East. And at that time, I was going to political education classes that the Panther, 2 members that were assigned to setting up Panther chapters had initiated at Brooklyn College. And so when Eldridge came to New York, we had already made the decision that many of us that were going to these PE classes, all of us, we go back to our respective communities and organize. That was where I first met Sekou Lumumba.
Odinga.
Sekou Odinga, Lumumba, Shakur, and many of the comrades that would later go on to form the different branches of the New York Black Panther Party in the Bronx and Queens and Manhattan, and later on in New Jersey. So when Eldridge came, we had just started setting up the chapters, and I was picked to work in the security and travel with him doing a small tour. And that's how I became a COINTELPRO target. I was first identified in that entourage with Eldridge. They didn't know who I was. They just heard people mention my name, so they had my name spelled all crazy. They didn't know who I was, and and then gradually, as the snitches started snitching, they got a little more information, and so I wound up in the agitated index, the national, the black, what is it, the active extremist index. Yeah, the extremist index, the Black Nationalist photo album, and all that crazy stuff. So, so that's what led, of course, up to my getting busted in the Panther 21, and those initial members that I talked about that were City College, they were mostly comprised of the Panther 21, of whom only 13 went on trial. So at that time, the party was getting hit. Chapters were being raided. Agent provocateurs were engaged in criminal activity that would draw heat on the party. And then we got busted in April of '71. And our case became a cause celeb on the left. Everybody from Leonard Bernstein to Marlon Brando and everyone was supportive of the repression that they thought was coming down on the party with the Panther 21. So the Panther 21 Defense Committee became a money-making machine, you see. And it wasn't on the West Coast, you see. And then, of course, fate would have it, only several weeks after we were busted in the Panther 21 case, Bobby Seale traveled to Connecticut with David Hilliard to do a speaking engagement up in New Haven, and he was tricked into witnessing the torture of Alex Rackley by an undercover agent and a naive Panther cadre. And he came down there. He was told to come downstairs. This guy that we brought from New York, Alex Rackley, he was the one that snitched on the Panther 21. That's how they ensnared the chairman. And he came down to the basement, and they tortured this brother who was an autistic brother that we used to have clean the office. He was a good young man. He was autistic. He used to clean the office. He used to do work around, little odd jobs around the Harlem office. He was no snitch. He was no informer, you see. But this piece of dog awful agent, I forgot his name.
George Sams.
George Sams. And
Crazy George Sams.
Yeah, he was supposed to be authorized by the Central Committee to go and root out provocateurs and ill-disciplined Panthers in the different chapters, or so people thought, you see. And he snatched Alex Rackley, took him to New Haven, and when Bobby came down and saw this poor young man in this condition, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He says, look, man, y'all do whatever y'all gonna do. I'm out of here. And they used that to say that he gave the order to have Alex Rackley killed, and he was down with it and all of that. So, as we all know, he beat that trial. But
right. Now, for the record, Bobby didn't know who Alex Rackley was. He didn't know anything about him because Bobby was from Oakland, and we're talking about the New York Panther. Yeah, and this taking place in New Haven, Connecticut. So he just
Cornell University. Yeah.
Right. Okay, just clarifying. Just clarifying that for folks that.
That's what I was saying. He didn't know anything about it. He went to the Panther, the Panther Center there, the Black Panther Party office there, and this dude Sams was already there. He had brought Rackley there days before, right after the Panther 21 were busted. He had held him in there, and he was interrogating him, and he was running the office.
Right. And Sams wasn't from New Haven either, though, correct?
No,
he was traveling. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he traveled. He did the same thing in Chicago. Tried to do the same thing in Detroit. He tried to do the same thing in Boston, in Detroit. Um, and that's how the brother Abdul Rahman got busted in Detroit and did all those years in prison, you know. So, so when Bobby left, there was, and the body of Rackley was found, and they raided the office, and of course they snatched up the naive brothers that was following George Sam's orders, and they had information that the chairman of the Black Panther Party was there that did this. So they put a warrant out. Bobby came and turned himself, and he was arrested. Right. So now there needed to be a campaign to free the chairman of the Black Panther Party and the defense minister of the Black Panther Party. You see? And the only apparatus that was mobilized around Panthers, liberal Jewish voters in New York, and this is another thing how the Panthers got labeled anti-Zionism in order to remove the support for the Panther 21 and Panther political prisoners. But that's a whole nother story. It was realized that the initial impulse that David Hilliard, the chief of staff of the party, when he accompanied Bobby, he visited me in prison in Tombs in Manhattan, and as a legal visit. And he said that they were going to close the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party, because it was riven with snitches, and all of these Panthers, the whole leadership, all of us were in prison, and they were going to close it. And I pleaded with him and told him, you can't do it. You shouldn't do that. That's ahistorical, because Harlem is the hotbed of Pan-Africanism. This is where Garvey was. This is where Malcolm was. This is where Lambe Brath and the first black models were. This is where black culture was. We can't let these people run the Black Panthers out of Harlem.
Right.
And he said, well, we'll think about it, right? And of course, as fate would have it, Bobby got that charge. And so it became necessary to build support for him on the East Coast. Got to remember, they're from the West Coast.
Right.
So they had to rely completely on the infrastructure that I had begun to build in Baltimore, in DC, in New York as the field secretary. And they had to begin to rely on the notoriety of the Panther 21, you see, because we had that type of massive support. We had future city council members that were on the Panther 21 Defense Committee. We had Alan Bernstein, the leader of the Philharmonic Orchestra, did a Panther 21 fundraising cocktail. We had artists from John Coltrane, and everyone was on it was very popular in New York, the Panther 21. So this energy carried over to New Haven. We set up a chapter there. We set up we sent cadre there who were used to working on defense work, and they built the type of campaign up there in New Haven in order to free the chairman, and it was successful. But during the course of all of this, New York was run or taken over by the West Coast. We sent two brothers to New York to run New York, who these were basically country boys, and they did run New York. They ran it into the hole, and the money was siphoned off from Panther 21 and New York Panther sales and newspapers. The Panther in New York sold the most newspapers in the country. And I think Chicago was second and Boston was third, you see. And so a lot of the revenue that funded the Panthers' daily operations came from the newspaper, you see. And so a lot of the funds were being siphoned off to the West Coast. And that's when it began to be shown that Huey, his lifestyle had changed. He came out of prison, he started living in a penthouse. He started hanging out with people like Elaine Brown, dubious background. And he surrounded himself with people who reinforced his paranoia about anything outside of California, outside in the party. And so So this lifestyle began to reflect in how the party began to perceive itself in the community. Increasingly, the party became more mercenary. It opened up a nightclub. It began to indulge in street hustles and all of this stuff. And meanwhile, for those of us on the East Coast who were living, who were putting paper in our shoes, selling newspapers on the streets in the winter, we were kind of like upset about that, you see. And of course, we didn't know, or some of us didn't know, that contradiction was also brewing between the international section of the Black Panther Party in Algiers, headed by Eldridge, and the national headquarters. There was an increasing tension between the two, especially during, in terms of how the party's image and funds from Europe would be channeled to national headquarters. Because the international chapter of the Black Panther Party in Algeria had an enormous relationship to liberation movements around the globe. We sent delegations to the PFLP in Beirut. We sent delegations to the Congo, Brazzaville, the Congo. We sent delegations to North Korea. We were interacting with the PAC and the ANC with Frelimo. Because a lot of Algiers then was the hotbed of liberation movements. They all had representatives there, and there was a lot of interaction. And the Party International section, was greatly admired by a lot of the liberation movements. And so that entailed a lot of support. We had excellent support with North Vietnamese and the National Liberation Front. Many of these people volunteered to train our cadres, you see, and send them to liberation school, bring them to liberation schools, which some of our brothers and sisters did do, like Sekou, for instance. So this was what was happening there, and Huey, they felt that they didn't really have a handle on all of this, that Eldridge did. So they needed some more leverage, and so they wanted Kathleen Cleaver, who was Eldridge's wife and the National Communications Secretary of the Black Panther Party, to dislocate from the international section and set up the national headquarters, because they felt that they would have more leverage over Eldridge by doing that. And up to that time, Huey's secretary was a sister named, I keep forgetting her name. And this is how we wound up going underground, by the way.
Was it Connie?
Connie Matthews. Well, you know more. Why don't you tell the story? Let me just put myself on mute.
I'm a student.
I put myself on mute. You put myself on mute, man.
I've been running with you 100 years. We done been through Oakland the whole night. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know I'm losing it, man. I can't remember simple shit.
Hey man, you 81, I'm 18. You know what I'm saying? So Connie Matthews, of course, she was Huey's secretary. She was signing everything. She was making sure that certain documents Huey didn't see, so that he couldn't be held culpable, for money that went one way and went to do something else, all of that nefarious stuff. I don't know too much details about that. You'd be better off asking Elaine or somebody like that about shit like that. But anyway, what happened was, unfortunately, Connie Matthews wasn't a U.S. citizen. She was from the islands. I think she was Jamaican, I think. And so she didn't have citizenship. So the FBI and the COINTELPRO
operations realized that Huey's secretary didn't have citizenship, so they put in a extradition order for her to be deported. They were putting in paperwork for her to be deported. So Huey, because she was signing everything, and Huey would be left there with no signature, nobody signing. So Huey, yeah, but we was just as devious, because what they decided to do, because we was on the East Coast and we was good with them, and Seth Whale and me was flying back every weekend reporting back as good soldiers do. You see what I'm saying? And Seth Whale and Connie got into a little affair. So ding, the lights went off, and they decided that Seth Whale should marry Connie Matthews, thereby making a de facto U.S. citizen, green card. They couldn't run her out. So that's what Seth Whale did, and they called it Revolutionary Love, and they put it on the cover of the Black Panther Party newspaper, their wedding. Wow. Well, the problem with that was that Seth Whale had a common law wife in New York named Myra Bennett, who was like about 4 or 5 months pregnant. Mm-hmm. So when she saw the cover of the Panther newspaper, did I tell you how Black women would react?
Yeah.
Should I go there?
I don't want to have this conversation.
Yeah, man, because they go cuss us. We go to what you talk about.
Hey, get your pronouns right. I'm just a reporter. But go ahead.
I'm just a witness, man. Okay. I'm just a witness. So girlfriend, she did what girlfriends do. She picked up the phone and called Connie Matthews on national headquarters on a bugged phone. And here's the FBI sitting over there with the tape. And they probably sitting there, man, watching Amos and Andy. Yeah, eat popcorn, watching Amos and Andy or something. And here comes, can I talk to Connie Matthews? Well, who is this? This is Michael Setawayo Tabor's wife. Hi, this is Connie. Let me tell you something, bitch.
So they went into all that.
And homeboy on the tape went.
Exactly.
He perked right up, right? So she started threatening everybody in national headquarters, and they got it on tape. Mm. So they devised what they called a hard-hitting plan to send letters to Huey's brother and people around him, talking about how his life's in danger on the East Coast when he comes this way. And
this the feds that started sending the letters.
They started sending this, and Huey is paranoid. He's paranoid, and these are his confidants getting these so-called spurious letters. This is from a brother in Harlem. I got to keep myself down. No, but hey, these brothers here ain't feeling you. You see what I'm saying? Wow. You tell Huey, man, them Harlem niggas, man, I don't know what's up with them.
So they flipped. They was able to flip this relationship beef, turn it into a federal situation where the FBI says, okay, we're going to start dropping these letters and making it look like everybody's beefing with the West Coast now. And so it becomes, and I'm sure there's other things involved. But
what it was involved is, although Seth married Connie Matthews, she was basically under house arrest when he wasn't there. Mm. You see, so when we used to go out every week, they stopped me from coming out, because after that they stopped me from coming out, because I'd be on some stuff, and I'd be like, yo, like what up with that? I'd be talking to Seth, say, man, you don't know what Connie's going through. Then he starts telling me the whole story about how she can't make a move because she's the one that knows, or she's Huey's secretary, and she knows she knows where the skeleton.
So why they get him from the East Coast? Was it a part?
Because they got control. They feel they got control because we soldiers. We that's our leadership.
So you knew. So real quick. So they wanted Kathleen Cleaver over there to keep Eldridge at bay internationally, and to keep Connie Matthews in the States. They devised a plan to get her to marry someone from the East Coast.
Yeah, to stop it. Yeah.
Control the East
Also,
Coast.
you got to understand that Kathleen. You understand, like I said, the international community was the hub. And you got to remember at this time, the students in France went on strike and shut down the whole country. The students in Italy went on strike. You know, the Baader Meinhof crew grew up. You understand? This was a turbulent time during the Vietnam War and they were looking to the left in the US, the SDS, the Black Panthers, as like, you know, vanguard. You see, right. So a lot of connections and money and political connections was coming through the international community, and Eldridge was holding on to it. And it was Kathleen that knew where all the folders were.
Right.
So that's why they wanted it here.
And Connie had to sign the papers.
You see what I'm saying? So when Eldridge and Huey got on somebody's show on national television, you understand, they went into some macho posturing, and Huey was talking about, I run the Black Panther Party, and Eldridge was talking about, well, what we gonna see about that, and blah 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 blah, you know, and there it was, bingo.
So that was the first internet beef.
Without internet.
Right. Let's just get on national TV. In front of the feds, in front of the state, in front of nationalist organizations, everything. Let's just bug out.
So I'm quite sure that this account that I just gave you is probably the first time that this really has been talked about in this way.
Right.
It's in my book, Future Past. And so I basically gave you a preview of my book, Future Past. And so that requires, therefore, that everybody who listens to this, you know, donate a pledge to the publication of Future Past and the work we got to do over the next several months, you know. Otherwise, they should never, ever listen to this program again.
Thanks. I don't know if there's a good thing for me or not, brother. That's
definitely a good thing, because we have to call our ranks now.
We got to call our ranks.
You know how? Yeah, you know how in jail when everybody said, "Man, we tired of this shit. We're gonna shut the prison down," and then everybody said, "We ain't locking in." And then the police goon squad come and they circle everybody, they bring out the gas and say, "Lock, it's the last chance, lock in." And you be up there talking tough, and you look around and there's only like 3 of you out there.
It sounds very familiar, brother. Listen.
Well, this is why we'd say it this way. Because after this is only going to be 3. You're only going to have 3 listeners.
and you and I are going to be one of them. So check it. I appreciate you sharing that. Of course, we've had this conversation. I want to before we move on, I want to get back to Assata, because we kind of we went into a whole nother portal. You know what I'm saying? Which is
So I mean, what that has to do with Assata is that, you know, after December of '71, you know, one of the main means by which the BLA, you know, funded our operations were twofold. We made unauthorized withdrawals from financial institutions, and
unauthorized withdrawals, brother.
Yeah, and we elicited contributions from drug dealers in the Black community. Those in lieu of funeral expenses. So so that was one of the two ways, you know. So as the first cadre started to have to move around, Assata had assumed more of a role outside, because she was much more focused. She was always very disciplined. She was very calm under pressure, and she didn't come off, in I don't want to say she didn't come off in a demanding, commanding way. You see what I'm saying? She persuade she I mean she had brothers like Twyman Myers, and and they was following orders, and they followed instructions, and they protect her,
Right.
and that carried over to the other cadres who were underground, and it was primarily those that synergy that Sekou Odinga brought to the mix, because Sekou Odinga was the original Panther 21 member who escaped, and he was in Algeria during this whole period of time that I'm talking about.
Mm.
And he went and trained with the PAIGC down in Guinea-Bissau, and he didn't have to come back into the United States, but he did.
Right.
You see, and so he brought with him, the type of connection, with the side that Assata was on, that merged out of the party, and the other side that was more or less related to Matulu and RNA and that crew. You see, because that Lumumba and and uh, and um, and Sekou and Matulu, they all grew up together. You see,
Right. Right.
so that's what led to the synergy that Sekou brought back to free the Sada. You see,
Right.
that
Right.
that that freed the Sada and made that move, and by the grace of Allah, she died in freedom.
No
She
doubt. No
died.
doubt. About a month ago. Um,
So I just
I'm
wanted
glad
to
that.
conclude that way.
No doubt. No doubt. No doubt. And for folks who are unfamiliar, definitely, you can learn more about her particular plight, the May 2nd, 1973 New Jersey Turnpike incident. Of course, Zayd Shakur was assassinated, murdered on the New Jersey Turnpike. Of course, she was shot with her hands raised. Of course, Sundiata Kohli went on to do uh, close to 5 decades in prison. Um, and of course, her liberation, as Dhoruba just alluded to, which took place 46 years ago, November 2nd of this year would have been her 46th year of from her liberation in at Clinton Correctional. So we say salute to Assata Shakur. Um, and there's more that you can read up about her. I know that in a recently released book, Revolution in These Times, some interviews that I did with Dhoruba, past interviews. You can check out more of the stories. You can check out why she wasn't considered a COINTELPRO target and chess rob and so on and so forth. Get more information on that. So make sure you pick up Revolution in These Times. And as Dhoruba stated a few minutes ago, he has a few upcoming projects, including soldier stories that you can check out. So we're not gonna give them everything right now, Dhoruba. We're gonna uh, keep it moving a little bit, but we say salute to Assata Shakur, who was 78 years old this past September 25th, and we say long live the spirit. Now, what I would like to do, Dhoruba, because of the fact that, of course, and I appreciate you hitting folks with information. A lot of this we've talked about over decades, and I'm sure that like we always do, a lot of times jewels are dropped that haven't been dropped elsewhere. So we appreciate that, right? But I want to say, because again, people talk about Assata in a folklorish manner, and they talk about, there are folks many who are part of elitist spaces. Many of them come out of the nonprofit industrial complex and become professional activists, quote unquote, professionalizing, organizing, so on and so forth. And there are others who have either blatantly rewrote or participated in the rewriting of history through things like artificial intelligence, through things like the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other misinformation platforms and programs. I ask you because, again, since her transition, we see all types of, I walked with Assata in the 3rd grade, and, I was in Cuba with her when, we was playing dominoes, like all kinds of things and whatnot. What would be a way that you would say that future generations and the generations of now, your generation, my generation, those under us, of course, I'm not saying we're part of the same generation, but those who come after us, what would you say a accurate or a good way to carry on the legacy of Assata Shakur? What would you suggest for folks who, besides just getting a t-shirt, or besides just, of course, we know there's a number of different programs and things that are coming up. What would be ways that you say that we can continue the legacy of Assata Shakur, of the Black Panther Party, of the Black Liberation Army as a whole?
Well, that's a pretty deep question. I think one of the things that younger people can take from Assata's experience is that men and women make history, and many times they make history because they start out with an intent to make a difference, to be relevant in ways that are both humanistic and compassionate, but also in ways that are very stern and unyielding. And I think that one of the things that Assata personified was, as the events began to overtake her, whether when we was underground, when some of her comrades were falling, and she had to make decisions and create safe areas and move from one place to the other. Because you got to remember something, that the Black Liberation Army was nurtured by the people. It was the community. It was the community. It was the community that provided us the safe houses. It was the businesses that, the community little bodega stores that allowed us to get provisions or to run a printing press in the back or the laundromat. You see what I'm saying? So it was the community, and that's what people have to understand. That's one of the takeaways that I've always tried to point out to the in regarding to the Vietnamese people and their victory over the most powerful military power on the planet, the most powerful military on the planet, when they defeated the U.S. military in Vietnam. They didn't get the memo that they were supposed to lose. So they fought from one generation to the next. They devised methods to turn the enemy's waste into their values, just like all liberation movements do. That when the people combine their culture, their needs, and mutually support each other, there's no enemy that could defeat them. You see, for those who can't get on the front lines, it's a matter of persistence and endurance and a will to survive. For those who can man the front lines, it's a matter of being effective and being operational and ensuring that the opposition and the enemy knows that there's a consequence and they can't go on doing this forever. Because one of the things you have to understand about a people's struggle for liberation, African people have been at war since we were taken from Africa. Since the triangular transatlantic slave trade commodified black flesh and waged war against African people. So we were brought here as an act of war, and we've been maintained here under legal and other types of pretexts that reflected the status of war. And we've been criminalized as a permanent underclass, as those to be considered dangerous and criminal. And this is because we are living in an ethno-European white supremacist construct. It was a settler colonial construct. It genocided the native people. It enslaved Africans that were brought to this hemisphere. And these people, the inheritors of destruction of this constitutional republic, they will not undermine or destroy this edifice that has brought them all of this power and privilege. And this was the major mistake that the civil rights leaders of the 60s made. They were under the delusion that white supremacy in America had a conscience, that these people that were maintaining these institutions of exploitation and murder and racial terror, that they would feel guilty over the sins of their ancestors, and they would dismantle the very institutions that ensured their survival. That was a mistake. And so all the victories that these civil rights leaders, our dear brothers, MLK and Abernathy, and all of the brothers that led the valiant civil rights struggle for our equality and human rights, they didn't achieve any real institutional victories. They only achieved symbolic modifications of the system that could be taken away at any given moment. And we look right now at the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We see now it's going to the Supreme Court, and the final provisions in that Civil Rights Act are about to be gutted. And that's the right that's to prevent gerrymandering based on racial lines. So the Civil Rights Act of 1965, something that we think that we've won that would empower us, turned out to be symbolic. And they spent all of the time from 1965 chipping away at that act with mass incarceration, when they thought our numbers we would outnumber them in these key urban areas. So they started the war on crime and mass incarceration, the war on drugs and the criminal industrial complex. Because in prison, we have hundreds of thousands of eligible voters, but because they're felons, they can't vote. You see, so we have a system where those who became the most expert poverty pimps of the 60s, when LBJ declared the war on poverty in order to assuage the urban masses who were burning down cities every summer, LBJ said, well, look, they have to have something, an investment into that city. They have to have an investment into things, and that way they won't burn it down. So he started this war on poverty. And the war on poverty is what gave us the ancestors or the forerunners of the modern misleadership class that we have. The poverty pimps that came up in the cities of New York became local politicians, and they became bought and sold mouthpieces for the status quo. And then we have these black faces in high places. They used to be advocated by Amiri Baraka and all of these black nationalists, that if we got black people in positions of political power, we will then exercise control. So Jesse Jackson and all of them walked out of the black political convention saying it wasn't time to leave the Democratic Party. It wasn't time for us to withdraw and organize our own party. So they killed the impulse of black leadership and a black working class party, and said that we should remain faithful to the Democratic Party. This is Jesse Jackson. This is the very Negroes that we celebrate today. These are not the Abernathys, the ones who abandoned Martin Luther King's Poor People's Campaign and decided to run for political office. You know, the bald-headed one, what was his name? There's a whole bunch of them. They all look the same too.
John Lewis.
Yeah, John Lewis, and he looks like that other coon from down south. What's his name? In South Carolina. Clyburn. They all look the same. You see?
Call the man a coon, brother.
You know, okay, raccoon. You know, so I'm just saying that These were the hairs of the poverty pimps. These were the ones that we have in the Congressional Black Caucus. And when have you heard a peep out of them about a genocide that's going on in real time, the first genocide in the 21st century? You haven't heard a peep out of the Congressional Black Caucus. They're barely whispering about masked bandits running around in anonymous white vehicles, snatching people up on the street based on racial profiling. They're barely talking about that.
Right.
You see, and so we realize now that we've had more. We have the most prolific harvest of black faces in high places in our history, and no political power.
The richest slaves. Real quick.
Yeah.
No. So I was going to ask you because I'm sorry, but we're going to have to do a part 2. We got 15 minutes left, and it's so much we got covered. It's your fault. We had this combo before we got started. We had like a 4-hour combo about.
That's because you don't answer your phone and never talk to me, man. So I got to get it all off. I got to get it all off in one phone call.
You gonna stick to that story, brother? Listen,
it's true, brother.
So check it out. We definitely gonna do a part 2, but I want to go into something real quick before we hop off. Right? We know that last month, what's that? September 10th, the day before they celebrated September 11th. 2 weeks before Assata made her transition, Charlie Kirk got popped in the neck, and they flew the flag at half mast. There was no flag for Assata, of course. There was nothing but criticism, and folks like what's his name, Cash Patel. Yeah,
the dude that looks like he's seeing the future, huh?
Yeah, looking like his goofy ass. You have folks like him, talking shit about,
now that's the dude that need to put on some shades.
Yeah. Well, he ain't getting these, brother.
No, I'm just saying.
Here's a shade.
He need to put on some Louis Vuitton shades, man.
Man, listen, that dude right there. But of course, my point is saying that is right now, of course, they talk about Charlie Kirk like he's a hero. Trump issued his executive order purporting that where he designated Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. A few days later, he issued National Security Presidential Memorandum number 7, which is supposed to be on countering domestic terrorism and organizing political violence. Now, his logic in this was Charlie Kirk getting popped, Justice Brett Kavanaugh having some type of assassination attempt, the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, and all these attacks, quote unquote, on ICE. The fact is, none of that having anything to do with quote unquote Antifa, anything that was anti-fascist.
Or the left.
Yeah, or the left as a whole. You know what I mean? But he's saying, okay, because of all of this, anything that is deemed anti-fascist can be looked at as terrorist.
Oh, absolutely. So,
I wanted to know your response and thoughts on that, man.
Well, like I said, people have to study the rise of fascism and how fascism arises, and how fascism arises. This is the game plan. You demonize the opposition. You smash dissent and criticism. You see, you create a mass line and lies, and you do the Goebbels repeat. If you tell a big lie so many times, people are going to believe it. And this is something that Orange Man does all the time. He lied 24/7. You see, and I mean, this dude, man, And people be fact checking him while he's lying, and he still keeps on lying, and people still keep on listening to them because they want to hear what he's saying. You know, and this takes me to something I don't want to digress. Millions of people showed up in the streets to the so-called No Kings March, right?
Right.
And the reason, and the fact of the matter is that the organizers of this march used the feudal symbolic characteristics of a king. Right. Kings have been dead and thinking in Western civilization, essentially politically, you understand, since before the breakup of the British Empire, you see. But they're using this term kings to indicate that this phenomena of fascism and authoritarian dictatorship and a total demolition of democratic principles is the consequence of one person, right, and his ego and his desire for power. When this is institutional, this is about the oligarchy and the corporate political state and how the corporate state and the military-industrial complex trumps the votes of American citizens. They determine where resources go. They determine how the U.S. foreign policy is implemented, and it's always implemented to the benefit of the oligarchs, or the billionaires, or the rich. You see, so we need to understand that if those millions of people that came to the streets said we will come into the streets because we resist the rise of a fascist democracy controlled by the rich, then that demonstration would have had a whole different historical meaning.
Right.
But talking about a king, when Orange Man bites the dust, they talking about he gonna run for another term. Orange Man might not make it to the end of the year.
Right.
And then who you got? Homeboy JD. Man, listen, man. If it wasn't for bad luck, we wouldn't have no luck at all. I'm trying to tell you, you know, you get rid of ho and hum comes in. You see what I'm saying? So it's ho hum.
You know, it's funny you saying that because it reminds me of what we talked about before with the whole hands up, don't shoot. You know what I'm saying? Decent, defund the police. It's like the same empty rhetoric playing over and over and over again, and they package it like it's a solution. I even had
because they use that.
Yeah,
they use that to suck the oxygen. They use that to suck the oxygen out of any revolutionary potential of mass militancy. That's what they use it for. That's why look at the slogan, Black Lives Matter. This is a white supremacist genocidal construct. Black lives ain't never mattered. It was a question of mind over matter. White folks didn't mind and black folks didn't matter. Okay, so we know that. So why would you run out and declare in a white supremacist construct, yo, my life matters? Seriously. Seriously.
I mean, that's the craziest shit in the world. Just the thought of it.
Yeah, because what they're gonna say, yo, man, that you know, blue lives matter, even though there's nobody blue, but we know what we're talking about. We're talking about the bumbleclods in blue costumes, you know. And but I'm saying they'll tell you, reindeers' lives matter. Rabbits' life, all life matters. You see, and so you reduced yourself to a homily because you didn't understand that slogans in the mass movement matter. Okay, that's why you see the Black Panther Party. You never heard the enemy able to co-opt power to the people. What were they going to say? Power to the police? Power to the oligarchs? Power to the landlord? Nah, that's exact power to the people. And we said power to black people, power to Latin people, power to the people. And what did that lead to? The idea and the concept of a rainbow coalition and a third political party. You see, the ideology and the mass slogans and the strategic vision all go together. And you can see that the BLM movement was created by a few people, you understand, who thought that they were all that, took a slogan, and everybody that had that energy, that felt that there should have been justice, created the BLM movement in their community, got a BLM shirt. You understand? Talking about Assata taught me, didn't even have on the back, but Sundiata, Sundiata helped me, nothing. You see? And so that moved and who bought into it? The corporations bought into it. They poured hundreds of millions of dollars into it. And before you know it, it evaporated. It was a hashtag movement that fitted the times of the internet, that fitted the times of the network and TikTok. It was a hashtag movement where everybody got to be a revolutionary and a militant with one click of the mouse.
Hey man, and a couple photos, man. Everybody got their pictures, the T-shirts,
Yep.
and the thing that was so crazy is that, you know, and you remember just living in Georgia, you had places, you had Black Lives Matter rallies in places like Ackworth, you had Black Lives Matter rallies in Logansville, in places that you know damn well there would be no organization, there would be no thought of any type of revolution, but it was, you know, like you said, it was symbolic. It was a
and these organizers, they were getting discounted iPhones so that they could stream. You know, they had laptops. They were media savvy. You know, they would show up at a beef. You know, they would show up at a beef, check in the hotel, and they'd be the ones calling the press conferences and putting out the flyers, like they were the ones that organized the street demonstration, and they did.
Right. Well, listen, check this out, man. We need y'all to stay tuned for part 2. You know what I'm saying? This right here has been this particular part has been a tribute to Assata, along with you know, a historical analysis of the Black Panther Party, the BLA, but also we want to remind folks that there's an international component we kind of dance towards. And so we'll have another show to discuss what's going on from here to Gaza, what's going on in Sudan, what's going on right now with these billionaires who are looking to control the planet and who are doing a damn good job on that mission. So make sure y'all stay tuned. This is Black Power Media. We got Dhoruba Bin Wahad on deck. Dhoruba, we appreciate you for this part 1. You know what I mean? And you know, we got more to talk about. Anything you want to say to people before we jet up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that, you know, we need to pay attention to what's going on in this historical movement. There's plenty of moving parts, and they all affect our lives. You know, we see what's happening in New York with this candidate Maldani, who openly declares himself a social democrat and a Muslim, and how he's being painted into the corner as some type of raving communist. The average white American doesn't know what communism means. They don't have a clue about what socialism means. If they did, they would probably be avid communists. You know, so, you know, they're talking about everything from assassinating this man, deporting him. I mean, I heard rumors that 50 Cent offered to give him $250,000 if he would move out of New York. I mean, come on, man. How do we stoop to such buffoonish posturing, man? You know, but fortunately, you know, his movement and the way he's going is irresistible, it seems. It seems that people are, especially young people, are trying to make a move. So all I can say to those of us who might eschew electoral politics, but see that this is a very positive thing, I will close by saying that these are the best of times for oppressed people, and these are the worst of times. These are the best of times for us to begin to see who our enemies are, organize accordingly, and put aside those grievances and those beefs that make us weak. And you know what song to play, brother. You're supposed to have played this song.
Yeah, we played it in part 2. That's why I'm forcing you back. But anyway.
Nah, man, you got to play it on this closing. You should play it on this closing. You put it on at the end of this closing. So I would say, and you can, for all of those who think that that the days are numbered, here's my parting song.
No doubt. We'll be back.
So now you can play it. You can play it right off of that.
I got you. We'll be back at you. This is Black Power Media.
Don't punk out on me, man.
Brother. I ain't never scared. But we go. Stay tuned. Black Power Media. Rise up. Rise up. I'm tripping right now. You got me all messed up. This is RSTV on Black Power Media, Dhoruba Bin Wahad. We'll be back in the whirlwind. Y'all stay tuned. RSTV.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one. Well, the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen.